to another A-List and Ali Productions affair. This is to vote or not to vote. That is the question. It is a public debate. With us today, we have two individuals. Should be a very lively discussion. Before we get started with introducing them both, I just want to go over some basic rules. We want respectable commentating only. No name calling, no stabs at one another, no personal shots, no degrading terms, no profane language. That even includes the N-word of any form. No interrupting the speaker who has the floor. So when they have the floor, it is their time to speak. And then they are not to go over their allotted time as well. And I'll be timekeeping behind the camera. So I just show, if you see my red flag, I'm improvising with my board, but if you see the red flag go up, that means your time is up. For introductions, we're going to give each individual 5 minutes to just state their claim as to why they're for voting or against. And then we'll go into argument and rebuttal right after that. We'll give each candidate 3 minutes each for arguments and rebuttals. Audience responsibilities. Please, no booing. This is a respectable event here. So we're doing no loud shouting or shouting out, interrupting either of the speakers. Please hold your questions until the end of the debate. Write them down. We will have time for you to ask your questions, so don't forget them. Write them down. Type them in your phone if you need to. Keep an open mind. We ask that for not just the members here in the room, but for our online family as well. This was the purpose for this debate. We got a lot of, well, I shouldn't say a lot, we got some backlash from the general public about this topic. You know, people are, it's a very sensitive topic for a lot of people out there, and, you know, they feel like if you don't vote, something's wrong with you. If you are voting, something's wrong with you. And so we just ask that everybody please keep an open mind, listen to both sides of the argument, and that is the purpose for the debates, to have civilized discussions around things that we disagree with and come together as a community and hash out those differences. And you may leave the room thinking, you know, differently than when you came, possibly. So, okay, so we're going to get started. Contestant number 1 is Kemetu Bey. He is not for voting. He studied in etymology and epistemology. Epistemology. Has taught linguistics, methodology, and lecturer at various locations: Temple University, radio station WVOX at New York City College. Taught class at National Black Theater of Harlem in New York. Lectured at Louisville, Kentucky, Chicago, New Jersey, Connecticut. He's taught 16-week course at Philadelphia, taught classes at Jenkins Law Library, at Rutgers Law Library, and lectures at Everlasting Life. Lectures posted on YouTube, and lectures at Delaware. And panelist speaker at BCAT Cable Station in Brooklyn, New York. That is Kemetu Bey. Now, our brother Jauhar Abraham, he has asked that I just introduce him as a community activist. But you'll see that he's so much more than that. You know, he's very knowledgeable about the subject of voting, politics in general. He does a lot of activism work on the ground in Washington, D.C. area. He's got a lot of familiar faces out there, so you may recognize him because he's all over the place, making it happen for those in the Washington, D.C. area. So, again, please put your hands together for both of our candidates. Before we get started, I just want to go over a few simple facts, too, about the voting process. some little known information or information you may not know at all. Some reasons why I took the liberty to do a little research on why people vote or why people choose not to vote. So I found that those who choose to vote, the main reasons are because they feel it's their civic duty. A thing called magical thinking, which is they feel their voting behavior influences others around them. So they feel if they go out to vote, then other people will follow their lead and vote themselves. However, that's been proven that it's no real truth to that. It's just a theory. They want an opportunity to change the dynamics in their communities or in their society. They vote so their voices can be heard. They vote because they want to choose how their tax dollars are spent. And we found that a lot of people vote because they are afraid not to. Reasons why people do not vote in general. Apathy, or they're just too busy. They don't like the choices, the choices to vote for. They don't think their voice matters. They don't think voting matters at all. They feel that the system is corrupt, and they just don't know enough about the overall system to actually get involved in it. So those were the overall reasons why people choose to or not to vote. And before we get started, I want to bring my partner, Brother Ali, up so he can share a few words with you if he had anything to say, and then we'll get right into it.
Peace and love. I really ain't got too much to say because she said it all. And for the brothers who, this is normally our nationality class here on Tuesdays. We have this on the second and the fourth Tuesday of the month. And for people who don't know what nationality is, it's actually claiming your nationality, because if everyone don't know, the United States is a corporation. It's not a country, it's just a business, and I think that's USC 28.
Yeah, 28.
Section 3002, you can look in there and it'll tell you it's just a business. It has the EIN number with the IRS. So if you can't be a citizen of Walmart, or if you can't be a citizen of Lowe's or Home Depot, not to get off the subject, but because they're corporations, so it's the same with this. But that's what we normally have on Tuesdays, our nationality. And these two brothers, let's applaud them because hey, look, we just trying to learn and teach and educate people to the game that's going on out here. And whether you vote for the system or you don't, we can all agree that this system is crooked and it's dirty and it don't like us. It don't like us. So we're gonna let the brother come up first, Brother Abraham. Let's give it up for the brother.
Good evening. Can y'all hear me?
Yep.
All right. My name is Jauhar Abraham.
Use the mic.
My name is Jauhar Abraham, native Washingtonian. Been here for 52 years. I'm here to make the argument or present the argument of why I think we should be voting. I had an opportunity to do a lot of work in the streets once I changed my life. I started working to interrupt neighborhood conflicts and gangs, and in short, just to get young black men to stop killing each other. And it wasn't enough when I got into the work, when I would have mediations just to, kind of talk to guys about why we shouldn't be killing each other. I had to come up with some other kind of information that could help change their minds, so then I could start working on changing their hearts. And so what it took me to was studying the civil rights era. And so I went back to Alabama, and I began to study what took place in terms of what put in motion African Americans getting the right to vote in this country. And why all of that activity started was because the 4 little girls got murdered in that church. The 16th Street Baptist Church got blew up. And the people that was on the ground doing work at that time made a decision that they were going to go to Selma to start working because it was a sheriff there named Jim Clark, and the whole thing was to expose America for the hypocrisy that they presented all over the world in terms of being fair and just. And so it was a sheriff in Selma named Jim Clark that was horrible. And so instead of looking for the people who blew the church up to kill them, the decision makers made a decision to go to Selma and start working to expose America's behavior in the South through Jim Clark. And if you ever visit the Edmund Pettus Bridge or you go to Selma, Oprah did a movie a few years ago telling some of the story of Selma. So I started spending a lot of time down in Alabama just looking for some information, something that I could share with young men to help change their minds so I could work on changing their hearts. And what I discovered there was that the men there made a decision that the reason that people was not being convicted for the murder and the lynching that was going on in the South was because we didn't have a right to vote. So we didn't have an impact on who the judges were. We didn't have an impact on who the sheriffs were. We didn't have an impact on who the governors were. So they made a conscious decision to start fighting to get the right to vote. And when they got to Selma and they started working and organizing around the town of Selma, they made a decision that they had to march from Selma to Montgomery. And they had to go across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. And a lot of our people died in the pursuit of leaving Selma to get to Montgomery, to march to Montgomery, which was the state capital. And from that march, from Selma to Montgomery, that led to the March on Washington in 1963. And I'm about to land the plane. The reason that I believe that it's imperative that we vote, like to me, it's almost insane to live in a place, pay taxes in a place. You pay taxes on the items you buy in the store. You pay taxes on if you got cable, if you're using Comcast, Verizon. You pay taxes on every aspect of trading you do in this nation. And to be here and not vote and not have an impact on what happens to the budget, to me, doesn't make sense. And so I'm going to land the plane. Thank you, and I look forward to a great debate tonight.
Peace, grace and peace to those who came out for this insight of vote or not to vote. And I think it's very important for me to say that I am not saying that I'm against voting, because I never said that. I think it's very important to be clear. I'm a man that I played a game of chess. And when you play a game of chess, you know you have to be strategic. And the problem with the vote system is that we are not being strategic. If anybody have heard of this gentleman who was an excellent campaign manager, Claude Anderson, he is excellent. When you'll get a chance, go to the Breakfast Club piece and listen to him, and you're going to hear my piece, because he and I say the same thing. There's a term that we all should know. It's called, and you should have been very familiar with the term ever since this impeachment issue. And the term is called quid pro quo. We need to learn what that term means. Claude Anderson made it clear to me, and I'm going to make it clear to the people, that if you don't have an economic infrastructure to control your person who you're going to put into office, then where is the quid pro quo? The quid pro quo means I do something for you, you do something for me. And when Barack Obama was in office, where was the quid pro quo? So again, I'm not against voting. I'm strategic about voting. My mom used to say something that was interesting. She used to say, you know, son, we shouldn't be voting for the party, like the independents, the Republicans, the Democrats. She said we should be voting on the policy. So whoever brings the policy that's going to be suitable for our people across this nation is what we should be voting on. But we so caught up with the Democrats, Republicans, and the independent. But again, we have to be educated about our vote. We shouldn't just give our vote just to be voting. One of the problems that I have done a massive amount of research and studies, because that's the only way you're going to learn this system, right? Not going to the polls and pulling a trigger for your candidate. What I've learned after the Civil War, our people fought on both sides. We fought on the Confederates and we fought on the Union. And unfortunately, we was killing ourselves to become free. That's what we should be looking at. But then, this is the question. When the war was finally over, after the Civil War, the question is, how are we going to be recognized, or who was going to represent us in the Congressional House after the Civil War? Because we fought for our freedom. I don't want nobody here, and for those who are paying attention on Facebook, that the Emancipation Proclamation is what free our people. That's a damn lie. We fought on the Confederate side and the Union side. And unfortunately, we fought for white supremacy, two white males on either side who had beef with each other because they wanted to control the land and labor. And what we did is we gave them the opportunity to control land and labor to this day. That's what happened. So now, who was going to represent us in the House after the Civil War? So you know what we forgot? We had our own political party. It was called the Black Republicans of the South, mainly in South Carolina, where my peoples is located.
30 seconds.
So the Black Republican Party was overthrown by the Republican whites and the Democratic whites, and we have been consumed all the way into the Democratic white supremacist system. And they're the ones who's controlling the votes. So that's why we have to be educated on what's going on with the voting. Peace.
So I stopped after I did my journey back to the state of Alabama, because I think that's where a lot of this started for our people in this country. But then I had the opportunity to travel back to Africa. And I learned something over several trips back to Africa. I learned something, and one of the things that continue to crush black people all over the world, one is that we're stubborn and we're hard-headed and we refuse to work together. And we suffer in America from a disease that I discovered and while I was in Africa. It's called I refer to it in America as the FBE. It's the fake black elite. Those are the ones who get education instead of taking the education like in every other race, going back to their community, helping to uplift their communities. What they do is take their education to go try to be like other people and begrudge and look down on the communities that produce them. And so we can go through a list of names from Barack Obama on down. I mean, even though he looked like us, he didn't represent us. Rush Limbaugh said that. Like, the only people that was confused about that was us, because, again, in this country, dealing with politics, as I've traveled all over the country, working on the same issues that that are saying troubling issues in our communities. Donald Trump said something that was true. He said a lot of things that's true, even though they try to make it seem like, he's the most dishonest president ever. But he said that in the Democratic Party in the cities in urban America, they're run and have been run by black leaders for over the last 40 or 50 years. And the conditions continue to get worse. Education, drugs, rat infested. But because Donald Trump said it, we had a problem with it. We didn't hear what he said when him and Elijah Cummings had a back and forth. We only looked at like Donald Trump is the one saying this. But I know it's true. I live in a city where black people have been in charge for the last 50 years. And we have the worst public school system probably in the nation, where we have black leaders who make the decisions that it's okay for young black people to run around in the streets with more access to artillery than a good education. We in a city where, in my community, we get ready to experience $10 billion worth of development. But 20 years ago, black leaders dismantled vocational education out of public schools. So if your kids wasn't on track to go to college, they was destined to go to prison, to the streets or to prison. And anybody knows that a guy who's a plumber or electrician could be making six figures. He could be doing something to take care of his family. And so they decided, a conscious decision was made by black people with education to take vocational education out of public schools all over this country. And we imprison more young black men than anywhere on the planet. So to me, I'm never concerned with this term white supremacy. In fact, when I hear black people talk like that, to me it's crazy. Because anytime I'm in situations with white boys, I understand who they are and I make sure they understand who I am. And I don't give them the authority. I don't even talk like that. To me, that's crazy, because if our problem is we won't stick together. The only reason why they're able to do the things that they do to us is because some of us get education and we get in those rooms and we make decisions to turn our back on our community. I witnessed that firsthand in Washington, D.C. over the past 40 years. And until we hold each other accountable, we'll always be acting like white people are our fathers or they are in charge of us, because we won't go do for ourselves. And I believe, I read a report the other day that said black people spend over $3 billion on alcohol. Black women spend over $20 billion a year on hair care and beauty products. Like, we have the money. We just refuse to put the money where it's supposed to. We black nationalists, but we don't own grocery stores. We don't work together to support our restaurants or build institutions of education, but we sit around and talk about what white people doing. So to me, that's insanity. Insanity is defined by doing the same thing over and over and expect a different result.
I think it's very important to recognize the term I said earlier before was quid pro quo. You cannot really say it's absurd to say that white supremacy. Our people have struggled in this system for 300 to 400 years under white supremacy. And so we cannot really turn our back on that because it's still happening today. I don't know if anybody's seen the State of the Union address with Donald Trump. I have to. I'm a Moor, and I have to see the issues that he raises. And one of the Tuskegee Airmen was there, if anybody's seen the State of the Union address. And to me, he displayed white supremacy right before our very eyes, because when you close your eyes and your ears, you won't even see and recognize it. So you have to be careful. I'm gonna tell you what I'm talking about. The Tuskegee Airman was there and his great-great-grandson, correct? You're with me? If you've seen it. But who did he, President Trump, elect, gave that high honor to? Thank you. So you know who he should have given it to, the Tuskegee Airmen. Racist Rush Limbaugh received that award. That was disturbing. I have to watch TV and watch these folks and their supremacy. Supremacy is all over the television. They got our beautiful Nubian sisters romanticizing with the oppressor's children. It's all over the television. Tyler Perry is pushing it, big time. All of these commercials. And if you're watching TV like I am, I know you have to see it, you can't ignore it. So we can't say that it's absurd, because let me tell you something. The so-called white children, they're being lied to just like black children, the same way. And the purpose of them being lied to is to keep the supremacy over our children. They don't want to put them on a level where we supersede them. They don't want to do that. So they're going to have to keep pushing their program over us. Matter of fact, I put this presentation together for you tonight, 4 o'clock this morning. There's 2 histories about voting. Are we aware of that? There are 2 histories about voting. Who set up the voting system? History of white citizens' voting system. And then I put another one together called History of Black Citizens' Participation in the Voting System. So you got to see how the voting system is set up. Excuse me. You're familiar with Bloomberg, right? Yes. Right? Yeah. He used to be the mayor of New York City, right where I'm at. And he just jumped in. And he's coming in 3rd already, because he got $1 billion to exploit. And the reason why he said he's doing it is because he wants to stop Donald Trump. But it's just interesting because, again, as I'm stated before, you have to have an economic infrastructure to put your man in office to represent your agenda. This is what Claude Anderson said. This man was an expert in campaigning and management. Again, please, go to the Breakfast Club, pull him up, and listen to every word he's saying. If we're going to be involved with voting, we have to be educated. The 15th Amendment is the amendment that they use to allow the so-called black man to vote. But prior to him voting, prior to that year, which was February 3rd, 1869, prior to that was the year 1868, which was the 14th Amendment. That amendment was the amendment that made him a citizen. It made him a citizen. But that citizenship of the 14th Amendment is not a citizenship where he's a free man. No, he's a freed man. A free man and a freed man is 2 different types of man. So my whole thing is that 30 seconds, we have to be educated about which way we're going to go. We have to raise money in our communities, all right, and put the people in that office that represent us. I have done that. I voted for a woman who was from Guyana in Mount Vernon, New York, with the Liberal Party, and we put her right in office to become the comptroller of the city of New York, Mount Vernon, New York. And what was interesting about her in her position, she did her position very well because the mayor was trying to take away from the taxpayers.
Again, white supremacy, to me, is shameful for us to sit around and complain about Trump honoring one of his comrades. We should be honoring our people. We shouldn't be, again, we spend some ridiculous amount of money on all kinds of things that are not that important. And then we sit around when white people don't do for us what we should be doing for ourselves. And we've been blessed to be in this situation, not without help. We've had the teachings of the Honorable Marcus Garvey. We've had the teachings of the Honorable Noble Drew Ali. And we've had the teachings of the Honorable Master Elijah Muhammad, Dr. King. And over 100 years, we still sitting around waiting for white people to accept us. And to me, that's not a disease that they have. It's a disease that we have. I would never sit around. I think Trump should honor Rush Limbaugh. That's his comrade. I think we should be doing the same thing. And there's something that's wrong with us if we not happy if white people don't recognize us. In fact, if we are their natural enemy, why would they put us on a pedestal? I agree with the speaker that their main concern is to make sure our children work for their children. So why do we send our children to their schools to get an education if they're going to educate them to keep them underneath them? So again, the onus is not on the white man. Something is wrong with us as a people. And until we acknowledge that, like when I was a young guy running around in these streets, terrorizing people, doing all kind of stuff to people because I thought I could, under the auspices of my father and my uncles in Lawton, and ain't nobody here to take care of me, and I made decisions that impact other people's lives, until somebody helped me understand that something was wrong with me in the way I thought, a man will never, ever get help if he don't realize there's something wrong with him. And I feel sad for any black person that's sitting around crying because Trump gave Rush Limbaugh, honor or award at the White House. How do you say that this government is corrupt and wicked and evil, and then you look to be honored and recognized by them? As opposed to, if you're going to be in it, it's your job to get in it and change it. And that's the problem. We elect leaders, so-called leaders. They go to Congress. They go to these city offices like county council, county executive, mayors of cities, and then they turn their back on their people. So again, I never sit around giving white people that kind of credit, ever.
We don't want to contradict ourselves, because we can't speak like that and then turn around and say we should vote. That don't make sense. We can't say that we're going to move around looking for white folks to give us a handout and then say, wow, we sending our children to their school, but then we talking about let's vote. Well, whose system you voting in? Again, I already made it clear that the system of voting came from the Europeans. Originally, the electoral college vote, provided the Constitutional Convention with a compromise between the popular election of the president and the congressional selection. The 12th Amendment, ratified in 1804, changed the original process, allowing for separate ballots for determining the president and the vice president. The Electoral College is a body of electors established by the United States Constitution, which forms every 4 years for the sole purpose of electing the president and the vice president of the United States. The Electoral College consists of 538 electors, and an absolute majority of at least 270 electoral votes is required to win election according to Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2 of the Constitution. You'll need to have an infrastructure of how white supremacy is operating with the voting process. And then you're saying we should be voting in their system. So if you say we have to vote, it ain't like we voting in a system separate from them. We are voting in their system. One thing that I do recognize about foreign folks who come into this country, and we all recognize them too, we see them, they're here with us. And a lot of them, as they would call, as immigrants. And if you notice, you see a class of Japanese, Koreans, Mexicans. I mean, we can just name the foreign immigrants that come to this country who have probably been here already or migrated to be here. And if you notice, they're not making an issue about voting. But they, like the Chinese restaurants, we buying Chinese food from the Chinese restaurants. But you don't see them arguing about voting. You see the Mexican restaurants, East Indians or Arab restaurants, and you don't see them say anything about voting. So when I see these things for myself, then it goes back to Claude Anderson, what he's saying, that if we're going to participate in voting, we have to have an economic infrastructure to control our party. I have to give Al Lewis credit. Al Lewis was grandpa on The Monsters, if anybody remember that TV show back in the days. Reason why I give that guy credit, and of course he's a white guy, all right, so if you want to put it that way, but I give him credit because he started the Green Party. I'm saying we should start our own political party. You know, Malcolm had said it best. Matter of fact, Malcolm said what Drew Ali said about that one national vote. And if you don't have nationality, we can't have that national ballot. And because they're using the 14th Amendment against our people, they're subjugating us. And we don't recognize how they're subjugating us. They're controlling it. Because why? Because, as I said earlier, the 14th Amendment is what gave us the citizenship. But even when they gave us the citizenship, which is something that shouldn't be, because if you were born in this country, your citizenship comes automatically. How you know this is true? Because if you come in here as a migrant or an immigrant, you have to take a citizenship test. So if they have to take a citizenship test because they're coming into the country, what about the people who's already born here?
30 seconds.
We don't need legislation to say that we are citizens to vote. But again, that's white supremacy giving you a status of the 14th Amendment to vote under the 15th Amendment. So white supremacy is definitely taking control over us. They're definitely taking control over us because we don't control ourselves. The only time we had an opportunity to control ourselves is when we had the black Republicans of the South. And the white Democrats and the white Republicans overthrew our Republican Party.
This is interesting to me. Years ago, when the founding fathers of this nation wrote the Declaration of Independence, and they said all men are created equal. When they made that declaration, they didn't think that 200 years from that point, that black men and white men would be sitting across the table from each other. They made that declaration so that white men wouldn't tear the nation up, fighting each other over stuff that they should be able to share. But as it would be, today, we can make a case about that. And I've been a part of several elections, local elections, helping getting a mayor elected, who then put $18 million over a 4-year period of time into a program that I was running, that I was able to get some young people some education, get them out the street, get them some housing, where they became homeowners and stuff like that. So I know the personal value of spending time being involved in local elections. Again, this is like, if I could explain it to you this way, if I ask you a question as simple as, if I got on 95 South and I'm headed to New York from DC, how long would it take me to get to New York? Could somebody answer that for me?
4 to 4.5 hours.
You say 4 to 4 hours? Or 4 to 4.5 hours?
Depends on the traffic.
Depends on the traffic. So I submit to you today that this is the problem in the African community. I asked a question. I said, how long would it take to get to New York if I got on 95 South leaving DC? And the problem is we headed in the wrong direction and we don't know it. And we continue following people who are leading us in the wrong direction. 95 South, when you leave DC, the first sign you're going to see is going to say Richmond. And then you're going to see a sign that says Petersburg. And then you're going to see a sign that says Rocky Mountain. And one or two things has to happen. One, either you have to have the intelligence to realize that you're going in the wrong direction, or you got to have the courage to realize that you're going in the wrong direction and you have to make a U-turn. And just recently, a movie came out about Harriet Tubman. Do you know what happened to Harriet Tubman? People who looked like her, she was trying to free black people, right? And the people who was in bondage with her tried to turn her in. Black men tried to turn her in. And when she got to Pennsylvania, where it was some black people who was free, they took the position that you causing trouble for us because we made it. And you keep going back south, bringing people up here, causing problems for us. And that is the problem that we suffer from. And then we have the nerve, the gall to give that credit to white people because black people lack character and courage. I will never give that to white people. I will never give them when I come under political attack, it has never been by somebody white. It has always been by somebody who looked like me. In the paper, going to the Washington Post, going to the New York Times, it's always been black people. If you want to find people that's bothering any of the leaders for our country, it's black people. White people know who you are. Every time I go into jail, I do a ministry in the jail. And I'm sitting around in a group with 40 guys in the chapel. And I ask them, how many of y'all in here because y'all got caught doing the commission of a crime? And they sitting around looking at me. Yeah, that means you ran in the bank, held the bank up, and came out the bank and ran into the police. How many of y'all? So 1 or 2 hands go up. I said, how many of y'all in here because somebody that you know that looked like you, that you love and trusted, said your name, implicated you, or wore a wire on you? 37 hands go up. Like clockwork. So until we address, Dr. King was led up to that balcony by the guys that he loved and trusted to be assassinated. The people that was around Malcolm when Malcolm got killed looked like us. And we keep giving the credit to white people. No, we got to take responsibility or we never going to get out of this mess. We're going to be sitting around 100 years from now still talking about the white man.
We have to be careful with the contradictions. Again, this whole infrastructure was for them. The preamble of the Constitution tells you it's for them. When this brother, Jauhar, stated that the Declaration of Independence says that all men is created equal, matter of fact, what condition were we in when that statement was made? But let me tell you what Jauhar Ali has said. He said, if the Declaration, this is what he said, he questioned the Declaration. He's the only brother that woke me up by questioning the Declaration. He says, if the Declaration is stating that if all men is created equal, there is no need for the 14th and 15th Amendment. That was the most powerful statement I ever heard. Not even Malcolm or Farrakhan or Garvey have even looked at that statement of the Declaration of Independence. Jauhar Ali looked at it and questioned it. That if that was true, so we're not giving no credit to no so-called white man. Because Jauhar Ali gave me some insight to say, wow, there's no need for the 14th, 15th Amendment. So why would they have to create an amendment if the Declaration is saying that you was considered to be equal? Why would you have to create a 15th Amendment to allow the so-called black man to vote? Let me tell you how racist those devils are. They're so racist, there was a white woman in 1871 took her own consorts to court, federal court, because they wouldn't even allow the white woman to vote. They put the black man in the position to vote over their own white woman. So she took them to court so she can vote, or for white women to vote. And of course, the judges knocked her down and said that that statute was created for black men. It wasn't created for white women. So you see how prejudiced their own system is to themselves? So there's no credit being given. They're doing it to themselves. So if they're going to do it to themselves, they're going to do it to us. And so this is the infrastructure on what they do to themselves. So if they're going to do this to themselves, what do you think they're going to do to us? They're going to teach us to do it to us. They're going to throw each one of us a bone of quid pro quo, and then have us to do each other because they're in the position to do that. You know, of course you're going to see crime being committed by us on us. But who you think had the system set up like that? Prior to you voting, prior to you being, you know, set free, when you was in a state of slavery or in servitude. You know, when you see these movies, 12 Years a Slave and Django, all these sick movies they put out there, which I can't stand. And guess what? We in those movie theaters, supporting that sickness. Anybody familiar with Claudette Calvin? Let me tell you who she is. This is going to shock all of y'all. One day, Claudette Calvin was on her way to school. She was 15 years of age with a backpack down in Alabama. She sat down in a seat. Some white man wanted the seat she was sitting in. But she was sitting in her proper place because you know her parents, like our parents, would tell us, you make sure you be in your right place. Just don't sit anywhere because we don't want you to have any problems. We already know what time it is. So she was sitting in her right place. But the point is that if there was no other seat for this white man to sit down, Claudette Calvin had to give her a seat. And he was complaining to the bus driver that she wouldn't give up her seat. And she's telling him that, you know, she's sitting in her right place. She's in her seat. The white bus driver called the police on Claudette Calvin and had her arrested. 15 years of age, on her way to school. Right? Then what happened with her situation was there was a lawsuit that was brought up on her behalf.
30 seconds.
And what was interesting, they used someone else to trump her position and had her to come sit on the bus and made a big issue out of it, and that was Rosa Parks. They put Rosa Parks over Claudette Calvin. The real Rosa Parks is Claudette Calvin, the 15-year-old girl. She's the real Rosa Parks.
I mean, I think this is a great, that's a great history lesson, but far too often, like, we need a path forward. We need somebody to, like, what's taking place with white people right now in this country. The president of the United States is challenging this republic, and he really challenging this system to see if this system works. In fact, I look at him as the person that's coming to free us, because he's trying to tear this nation down. What he's doing is he's disrupting America's unholy alliances with other European countries all over the world. He's saying that the FBI is corrupt. And I know firsthand, because of my prison ministry, how many brothers are locked up because of the behavior of the FBI. And most of you elderly brothers was around during the 60s when they put dope in our communities to destroy the work of the Panthers and that kind of stuff. So we had a sitting president to talk about what I consider as an enemy of our people, to call them out. And to me, politics works like, if you can help me with my agenda, that's what politics is. I believe wholeheartedly that we should be participating in both parties, because we should be working to see exactly what Trump is working to see. If this system works. If the system don't work, we have the right to form a system of our own. We make the money, we make the amount of money that's equivalent, just the African American community in this country, to the 9th largest nation in the world. That's the kind of money we make in this country. We spend $3 billion a year on alcohol, $20 billion a year on hair care products, beauty products. So I'm just saying our priorities are off. Meanwhile, our children are being murdered in the street. That doesn't have anything to do with white people. I used to get grabbed by the police all the time. And they'd sit me in a room, 555 in D.C., and say, do you know this person? Do you know that person? What you know about this person? I'm in custody because of something I did. Why do I have to talk about something that you did? And what we do is give each other a pass. We make it seem like it's okay. But character and courage is how we get out of this. Character and courage. And as long as we skip over that, we'll keep acting like the white man is our father instead of practicing science to see if every vote count. If we don't like the electoral college vote, see, white people getting sick of that. So that's why they talking about it all the time. Since Clinton had 3 million more votes than Trump, now they're becoming educated about it. And so they working on changing it while we complain in the barbershop and we complain at the liquor store. All we do is sit around and complain, send our children to the schools that tell them that Christopher Columbus discovered America. If they put that that's the wrong answer, then they're going to get a deficient mark for that. We send our children to those schools. So again, these are decisions that we make, and we're okay with it. And as long as we continue to put ourselves up under somebody who don't have our best interests at heart, then I agree with this gentleman. But we have enough money to have an agenda. We just not focused, and we don't have a way forward because we revisionists in the history, and the history is important because it helps us to understand how we got to where we are now. But what is the path forward? Like, who's willing to challenge us on the decisions that we make? Who's willing to challenge us so that we can become responsible for ourselves, so that we're not sitting around expecting somebody to do something for us that we won't even do for ourselves?
When the founding fathers, which were Europeans coming from Europe, they were what they call denizens. You can look that up in the Black's Law Dictionary. The word denizen means subject of a British crown. And they was fighting against the crown so that way they can become free here, but at the same time, the hypocrisy that these denizens have put across American history, is that they wanted to be free, but they wanted to subject other people, by taking land and labor from other people. The reason why I'm using the term founding fathers because we already aware the rape that these Europeans have done to our people. The rape is so deep to a point where they have a legal term that you can look up in Black's Law Dictionary called parents betrayer. Parents betrayer means parent, father, father of the country. And each one of us here, unfortunately, have a birth certificate. And you will learn that the birth certificate was issued by the state. That state is the one that have jurisdiction over you through the Attorney General under the doctrine of parents betrayer. All right? Which means that the Attorney General acts as the surrogate father over us. And a lot of us don't even realize that. And they're using the birth certificate against us as a people. So, again, that birth certificate is written on bond paper to keep us subjugated. This is what they're doing to us. So, I think it's important for us to be aware of the infrastructure of what they have set up to do to us, to keep us under their control. It has nothing to do with giving them credit. We can't give them credit. We can't even give ourselves credit. We don't even value ourselves. But we put more value in Versace and all that other stuff to make these people rich over us. The 14th Amendment has been codified under Title 42, 1981. Listen to what it says. All persons within the jurisdiction of the United States shall have the same right in every state and territory to make and enforce contracts, to sue, be parties, give evidence into the full and equal benefits of all laws. And to the full and equal benefits of all laws. This is what they're saying. And proceedings for the security of persons. Now it's interesting how they use the term security, because this is the same term security that they're using in the preamble, which they was referring to themselves and their posterity. Have nothing to do with us. And even if they raped our Nubian sisters and we want to become their children through the product of rape, we still wasn't secured. I just want to bring that out. So it says here, for the security of persons and property. You see what the foreclosures are doing. So where's the security? You know, as is enjoyed by white citizens. This is what they're saying. So they're saying as enjoyed by white citizens. Like Malcolm said, who made them the ruler and the yardstick to measure ourselves up to them? We need to have our own thing going on. Can we control the vote? Yes. If we have our own businesses, if we go right back before we was integrated, because the integration system is what killed all our businesses. We had more businesses when we was not integrated. When the boycott buses was being done in reference to Claudette Calvin, that's the real Harriet Tubman. Look the history up. Matter of fact, I made contact because she moved from Alabama to the Bronx. She's in her 80s. I want to sit down and try to do a story on her before she passed. I think it's important that we honor our ancestors and our elders.
30 seconds.
So, did you know that when the boycott was happening with the buses, did you know what white supremacy did? They sued the black community because they lost money because we wouldn't ride the bus. Can you imagine? Nobody talks about that. They sued the black community because they lost money because we would refuse to ride on the buses.
Again, I'm going to rest my case on this. As we talk about all of the horrible things that black people have endured in this country, I'll tell you a little experience that I've had, like traveling to Senegal and Nigeria, and seeing how aggressive just the people are. It's almost like being in New York. Like, as soon as you get off the plane, the way people engage you is different. Riding through the villages in Nigeria, you know, you see guys out there with guns, with rifles, and I mean, you know, like asking, basically almost robbing you, like asking, do you got something for them? And, I mean, they just really aggressive. I spent a lot of time in Gambia. And when I was in Gambia, the first time I went to Gambia in 2006, I remember sitting on a beach saying, like, the people are so passive and so laid back. I could really see a ship pulling up and them just putting people on the ship, and black people standing around saying, I wonder where they going. And the one thing that black nationalists or people who taunt on this whole thing about how bad black people are treated, the one thing that they leave out is the reason that we got in this condition in the first place is because of other black people devalued us in the first place. They're the ones who sold us. And so if you don't ever deal with the issue of how we treat each other, then you'll never have the authority to deal with how other people treat you. Because if me and my brother together and we solid, anybody knows that if they come and bother me or him, they're going to have a problem.
True.
But we choose to, because we with this group, we going to diss that group. Or because we with these guys, then we do that. And so because we don't really have leadership, because leadership will bring us together. Leadership will help us to understand that we're stronger together than divided. And we can have our differences. We can be separate. That's why it's important that some of us be in the Republican Party. Even though people be like, oh, Trump is terrible. Oh, this person is terrible. Like, no. Why should they do something for you if you're not in their meetings? That's what the brother was just talking about. The quid pro quo, right?
True.
You do something for me, why should they do something for you? If you all in a group who haven't done nothing for you and they don't intend to do nothing for you. They the ones who you should be banging on their door saying, what you gonna do to help us? We sit around, Joe Biden is losing to white people because Trump have exposed the fact that they the same kind of criminal. They the same kind of guy. He got his son overseas making money, all for the might of the U.S. military, just like Trump got his children doing. Now, white people have taken the position on Biden that you're not who you said you was. So now he not even concerned about losing in Iowa, in New Hampshire. Guess where he can't wait to take the fight to? To where the blacks at. Because we ignorant. He helped the Clintons write the crime bill in '94 to lock us up.
True.
So if we had an agenda and information and some courage, we could do something to make a difference.
True.
But as long as we sit around and give white people this credit over us and give them this authority, how do you give them authority? Well, if you send them to school so they can be taught that Christopher Columbus discovered America, and you don't challenge that, if you send them to school so that the male teacher, who's supposed to be his male teacher, acts like he's his female teacher, and you don't have a problem with your son being in a situation like that, that's going to have some consequences on his development. And we the ones that sit around and pay taxes and say we shouldn't vote. We the ones who pay taxes to a system that's not delivering to us.
True.
Because we're not involved.
True.
So I say we need a path forward. We should know the history, but we should just know it as a point of reference. We should be spending our time seriously talking about a path forward. Thank you.
I have to definitely say Sankofa. If anybody is familiar with Sankofa, it's that bird that walks forward but looks behind. But walking forward is the progress. But he have to look behind himself to analyze the historical issue that was going on to correct those issues so we can move forward. Because something that Brother Jauhar had said, which is true, because the pinnacle of our condition did started in Africa, where there was too much tribalism going on. And this tribalism was going on just before the Europeans had arrived in the continent. The only thing they did was capitalize on our tribalism. All right? The reason why they can come together and capitalize is because they see us as the resource. They see our land and our labor as the resource, something that Europe was very poor at. And because what we did was we allowed them to put us in this position. So when I do hear people talk about reparations, the thing that gets me is that we never talk about the Africans, states should be giving us reparations too. We always talk about the Europeans should be giving us reparations for what they did to us, but we never talk about those African states that participated in selling us to the Portuguese, to the Spaniards, to the Dutch, and so forth. They should be giving us reparations too. And it disturbs me when I see brothers and sisters go back to Africa and they have to struggle to put themselves on their feet in Africa. The government is not even giving you anything. You'd be lucky if you get dual citizenship. So there's a gentleman who I watch, a brother who I watch, Dinas Amir. He travels all over Africa, and he makes statements that I do agree with, and there's statements I don't agree with. Because the Africans, and I'm talking about the ones that's in power, they're not doing anything for us as far as trying to put us into business. It's like we got to bring our business there and spend our money and build up things over there, build a house over there, and that's a problem. Like my mom said, because my peoples is Gullah Geechee, my grandfather and my grandmother, and they live on the Gullah Islands. And they struggled. And you think that they're gonna give up their struggle, their tears, their blood, their sweat, to go to some other place, to do it all over again? And one thing you can say over here, you can get Social Security. Over there, you ain't getting that. You ain't getting that. So, I listened to my grandmother, who's still alive. Matter of fact, she made 98 this past Sunday. I talked to my grandmother, because that's where the wisdom is at. She's the matriarch of the family, because this is how I get to learn what's going on, and of course I learned from my moms, Matter of fact, let me share something with you real quick. We are so conditioned by the way things are, we forgot how things really was. And the Jews always make sure that their children is reminded about the Holocaust. But we're not reminding ours of the hell of a course that we went through so we can strive to get better. My mom's is telling me that on New Year's Day, our people down south didn't say Happy New Year like we would say today. This is how saturated we have become in their European culture. My mom said, you know what we said, son? She said, Happy Emancipation Proclamation Day, because that day was a day of freedom. So that term or that phrase was an antic against Happy New Year. Why? Because on New Year's Day, they put us on these auction blocks and sold us. So we didn't even want to look for New Year's. And that blew my mind. We didn't even want to see New Year's because we knew that they was going to sell our families off. So that was a new year for the European, but it was a new year for us. So when this freedom came through, that's what they said, to remind them. But then we forgot about that. Like we forgot about a Black Solidarity Day. I remember that as a child, that we stayed home. We didn't go to school, she didn't go to work, we didn't go to no markets. That's why I know that we have the power, economic power. Because if we stop buying the turkeys and the hams for Christmas and the liquor for New Year's and stay home and bond with our families and our loved ones, we can economically help these people. They can look to our direction and respect us. We can create our own body.
All right, family. We will now open the floor up for questions. We'll start, I'll start the question off. And anybody who have any questions they want to ask, just raise your hand and I'll come around. Jauhar.
Yes.
Does voting integrate us deeper into this society?
Excellent question.
I think it does, and we're in this society and we're not going anywhere. So we need to use every tool available to us. And then if we realize that it doesn't work, we have the opportunity to work on changing it. I mean, that's the reason of the law is written the way it is. There are different interpretations of what was written. The brother mentioned the impeachment earlier in this discussion, and it was remarkable to hear attorneys reading the same articles, but their interpretation of it was different. So we have not fully participated enough to determine whether this system could work for us or not. I believe ultimately that Dr. King had it right. He was just before his time, that there's one race, and as long as we continue to play, we bait in that race game with Europeans, then we lose. We have the ultimate power. We're it. We're what everybody want to be. And when we take that throne, everybody else is going to have to fall in line, fall in place. I mean, that's just what it is. And I'm not upset with the white supremacists who want to keep white people separate, because if they integrate, they know they're going to lose their race. I mean, and over time, they're going to lose. And so we know that. So I understand what they're afraid of. And because I approach it that way, I'm not intimidated by them. I don't think they more than they are. It don't make me more than what I am. I understand their issue, no more than when my son is misbehaving because he wants a snack that I won't let him have. And so I correct them appropriately. Thank you.
Thank you.
For me?
so my question is, if you're not upset by white supremacy because you understand it, then would you say that you'd understand black supremacy and that you could be for black supremacy?
So I'm not for any form of supremacy. Like, what I believe is that there's one race, and I believe that we've been lured into a game on somebody else's playing field, and as long as you play somebody else's game, that they have the ability to change the rules, then I don't think you have a chance of winning. And so I'm not, I listen to the black people who are supposed to be black nationalists and black supremacists, and I sit in a room with 50 guys who make at least $50,000 a year, and they haven't taken the responsibility of putting money together to buy anything to help their community. And so I don't blame that on white people. I think that we have to take responsibility for ourselves, and I don't think that we have to, shun other people to take responsibility for our families and community.
But how is it that you feel that your ambivalence towards white supremacy is not inherently a support of white supremacy?
I think that's a good question too, but the answer to that is I'm focused on, that's just like me spending more time, like I see my neighbor abusing his wife and his children. That's like me spending my time trying to tell him what he should be doing when I'm not taking care of my house. So I believe that when we take care of our house, I believe that white people fall in line. Like if you understand, like prison is a great place that you get an opportunity to deal with white supremacists and black people. And they don't really want no trouble in that space. As long as they stay over here and they're able to do what they can do on their side, they don't come over there and create problems with the black people because they don't really want that trouble. Even when a problem arises, they look for who the leader is to try to figure out how to work it out. So I know that and that's because everybody's confined to this small space, and it could get bad real fast for everybody. And I think that as long as we give people the authority over top of us, and it's false authority, I think it impairs our ability to soar and do what we're supposed to do.
All right, this can go for either one of y'all. When dealing in voting, are we dealing with a Republican form of government? And has there been a Republican form of government in the last 40 years?
That's a very good question. That's a very good question. Even though the Constitution said that we're supposed to be guaranteed a Republican form of government, they're not living a Republican form of government. The question is, how could it be a Republican form of government when in 1871 that the United States were converted over to a corporation? So they violated the Constitution. So now, again, let me give you a little bit of history so you know what's going on. 1787, there was what you call the Constitutional Convention. You had 55 delegates. Out of the 55 delegates, over 2/3 of the delegates were esquires. The 1/3 were corporations. So when you begin to start looking at this infrastructure of the system, what do you see running? Corporations and attorneys. That's what you see. So the Republican form of government had been revamped and taken over by the corporation. Not only in 1871 that the United States was converted into a corporation, but we all know what happened in 1933. That the same United States corporation went bankrupt, and that brought in the debtor-creditor system, which we all up under. All right, and they violated the Constitution again by using Joint House Resolution 192, which is legal tender, which we have in our pockets today. All right, it was supposed to be gold and silver. But again, they removed that gold and silver because they don't want the empowerment of our people to be at that source of gold and silver. So again, there is no Republican form of government. All right, they take these oaths to say they're going to uphold the Constitution, but technically they're not upholding it. As a matter of fact, Donald Trump should have been impeached because he violated Article 1, Section 9, because it specifically tells you that you cannot be involved with foreign nations. You can't receive any funds, emoluments, profits. It tells you that right in there. That's why I couldn't get over how Meghan got away with marrying a prince from England. So it is no Republican form of government. Everything is based upon a democracy, not democracy, but a democracy. All right? So I think it's important to know that.
And I would just like to say again, about 5 or 6 years ago, the people in Egypt had it up to here with that oppressive government that they was under in Egypt. And young people studied what happened in the state of Alabama in Egypt. And in a week or two, they ran President Mubarak out of the country. So I'm saying we can, everything that's written, none of that stuff really matters if people show up. Because if people show up and create the type of civil unrest, that's what makes you go to the table and begin to negotiate. So until we show up, which we have not shown up, we don't know whether the system is going to work or not. Because the majority of us don't show up. In every community, in D.C., for example, where I live in Ward 8 in Southeast, we have 80,000 registered voters. 8,000 show up to vote during the election. So we don't know if the system work or not because we don't participate. And we don't take our civic responsibility serious as a people. We don't take parenting serious as a people. And we stubborn. We want to do things our way. And every bar and every shopping center around here is full of parents drinking and having a good time. Meanwhile, the streets are raising their children. I would never blame this on white people. If we can't get in a room and figure this stuff out on our own, then we deserve exactly what we get.
I have a question for you. I don't disagree with much of what you're saying. My question for you is, do you believe that there are other ways of accomplishing what you're saying aside from voting? For example, cooperative economics. That is I think the thesis of what you're saying, right? It's coming up in a lot of your points, right? Do you think that there are other ways besides voting that can accomplish what you're talking about? And my second point is, are you encouraging Black people to vote into the current system, or are you encouraging us to build our own systems to then vote into? Because I'm confused by it.
Okay, so to answer your second question, the system that we're in, I'm not sure who people believe.
The American.
All right, so 1% of the country dictates everything else. The majority of people work to keep 1% of the country rich. So in that 1%, there's a lot of white people who are being mistreated, miseducated, and misused as well. So because there's a lack of real education, and I believe that the world is waiting on us. We're the lost children of the house of Israel. I believe the world is waiting on us to take our rightful place on the planet. Everything else will line up. So in the system that we're in, we don't know whether it works or not because we don't participate. So as a scientist, if I'm doing something and it's working, then why I don't have a need to change it. But we're not even doing it, so we don't know if it works or not. If 3% of our population, if we 12% of the population, and when white people are running for the same office, we can make the difference. 3% of us vote out of the 12%. I'm not sure that we're really testing. I mean, we live in a system that was developed, the Declaration was written a couple hundred years ago. So some of that stuff need to be updated. It need to be changed. But we have people who look like us in place to write bills.
Do you think that voting works for the people who do vote?
I think it does, because that's one of the reasons that they continue to vote.
I have a question. All right, so if I've heard what you've said here correctly tonight, it can be boiled down to black people are like crabs in a barrel. Would you say that's correct?
No, because I think that's one of those things like saying Indian giver. I don't think crabs in the barrel really pull each other down.
So,
You know how we misuse stuff all the time? Like we say Indian giver, and the Indians never really gave it to them. But when they start fighting back, like we use.
So, see, the reason why I brought up that one is because over and over again tonight, you've reiterated how black people need to take responsibility for themselves. Black people are always giving other black people a hard time, etc., etc. So that's why I utilized that phrase tonight. If you want to talk about, misapplication of things, I've heard a couple of things from you today that I thought were interesting. So you mentioned how if scientists see that a thing is working, that there's no need to change it. But when you say that, I'm wondering what you mean by working, because I'm a scientist, and that's not how we do science. Like, when we do science, the main point is to make sure that we figure out what something is not, so that we get a better idea of what something is. And then when we state what something is not, repeatedly over time, lots of different people can state that, then we have a better idea of what something might be. True. But it's never a situation where we're working towards a certain goal or whatever. We may have hypotheses or whatnot, but in the end, the only thing we can do is perhaps support it, and it has to be supported by a whole bunch of people before we can ever get to the point of saying, okay, well, I believe that we can support this.
You saying the same? I mean, voting.
Well, we're not saying the same thing. The way you used it was a misapplication. And I have another question that I have for you is.
You can come back. You can come back. Let's get
Is this question for me or is it for?
It can be answered by either one of y'all.
Okay.
Both of y'all can answer.
Okay.
I wanted to know, like, what do you consider a black person? Black people. Keep saying black people.
So
Black people.
Technically, that's a byword that was used by white supremacy. I've learned this from Jauhar Abraham. He said that there's no such thing as black, Negro, and colored because those are terms that allude to slavery. I have talked to elders, and it has been said, brother, in history, that you couldn't call our people black. That was fighting words. Marcus Garvey was trying to remove the word Negro from our people and was trying to get them to recognize themselves as Africans. And that was a difficult time. But because Noble Drew Ali was his contemporary, he was very successful for those who did hear the call when he says that black, Negro, and colored is terms that allude to slavery, because we as a people, we never call ourselves any of those terms. Those are the terms that came from white supremacy, all right? We were known by many names by us. Matter of fact, there's no such word as black, Negro, or colored in Africa, in any of in the languages, not even in Hebrew or even in Arabic, because those terms that we use today, we speak ancient languages. In ancient languages, those words never existed. So we can't, so this is what I used to say. Are we older than the word black, or is the word black older than us? That's what I used to always say. Are we older than the word black, or black older than us? Because we gotta learn through language how that came about and why we wind up calling ourselves these different terms. We can't use Portuguese terms. We can't use Sanskrit terms, terms from other people that was used against us as a mark for slavery.
My answer to that would be, for context, in this setting, in this meeting, we refer to ourselves as blacks, African Americans, but really we can be self-defining. We can have a conference and come up with what that's my whole point. If we got a problem with something that somebody is referring to us, like, we should be self-defined, and like, it's nothing stopping us from doing exactly what we want to do.
Excuse me. First, I want to say thank you to both of you for this interesting discussion. Along the same lines of using correct, specific language that's researchable. The whole black-white thing is fiction.
Right.
It's for children. So I like what you're saying, brother, about we should make a plan forward. But I guess my question is, do you acknowledge, and for both of you, do you acknowledge that there's a certain baseline of competence that we would need to try to guide everyone forward towards, and also in order to put together a plan, I'm just curious what your thought is. Are you talking about a 4-year plan, a 10-year plan, a 40-year plan, a 3-generation plan, a 7-generation plan? Can you elaborate? Both of you, please. Thank you.
No, thank you for the question.
Good question.
I'm thinking that whatever we should be doing, we should be thinking 100 years from now. The work that I do now is not because I expect to see this stuff in my lifetime. I spend a lot of time making sure that my children know, so that they're prepared and they can make better decisions than I did. That's where it starts at. And I think that once they know, because really it's about economics, it's about understanding economics, but you have to have competence, courage, and character. And I think that's what our community is lacking. I think when I made mention of Harriet Tubman, when my 14-year-old son saw black men trying to turn her into the white people, my son said, "What kind of guy is he? What's wrong with him?" Right? And having that kind of experience with him, and so that we could talk through that, it helps to develop something in him, right? And I think too often it's just natural for our people to just turn each other in. Because this same thing goes on. We went to see another movie a few months ago called Queen and Slim. At the end of the movie, which I took my children so that we could process this, it was white people that helped them as they were trying to get to Panama. Because if you just get caught up on black and white stuff, black people have done more to hurt black people in our movement to gain freedom. I said this earlier. It was black men that lured Dr. King to the balcony. The Reverend Billy Cowell said, "I got him up here and moved out the way just so they could have a clear shot." He said that out of his mouth, right? When I saw Malcolm get shot and lay on the ground in the Audubon room, it was black men around him sucking air out of him while his torso is shot up. So until we deal with the way we treat each other, and it started in Africa. It didn't start with white people. It started with black people devaluing black people. And I'm going to close by saying this. My belief is that, and what I've learned, is that we are the descendants of, right now, here today, of conformers and resistors. The same people that was around that was setting Harriet Tubman up and Nat Turner up, their descendants are here. And some of us are descendants of the Rosa Parks and Nat Turners. We the resistance. And so it's always a conflict. And even before them in Africa, it was people in Africa who said, these people not worth anything, so we can send them off to slavery. Their descendants are here. And they operate out of these political offices in America because they are okay with our children shooting each other in the street when they have a budget and they have resources that they could be doing to help redirect some of this stuff. I said earlier, it was a crime to take vocational education out of public schools. A crime. My grandfather told me that he learned how to do drywall and paint by the time he was in the 7th grade. So he never had to go to work for nobody. He could walk from the house and find work and build stuff in D.C. all the time. And he raised a family like that. All these guys sitting around on corners in every city in this country, where their parents at? Like, who failed them? People didn't vote. People didn't show up to PTA meetings. People wasn't involved. And in closing, if you want to see a high-performing school, a public school, see if they have a PTA, a functional PTA. Everywhere I go, and it's a functional PTA, parents show up to the school, the children are performing at a different level than if you go to schools where parents are not present. And it goes back to the women, who they having children with. The wren, the bird, the female wren, she flies around to 12 nests before she decides who she gonna mate with. Because she gotta see who she gonna be mating with. Black females haven't took that kind of responsibility. They have children and then they say, well, the father ain't nothing. You had an opportunity to know who the father was before you did that. You can go see his grandfather and his father and give you some kind of indication. Like, if we don't get down to having real conversations like that, then the only thing we doing is producing hubcap thieves, marijuana smokers, and prostitutes. And that's what we in right now. And we blaming white people for it.
You want me to answer? Oh, I do. Yeah, but you have to, excuse me, you would have to repeat the question. Because,
I'm sorry.
No, it's cool. It's cool. I just want to be on point. Yeah, just give me the question again.
It's Londo. So the question has to do with to the idea that we need to plan going forward.
Got you.
What flavor of plan do we need? Maybe we need multiple plans. Is it a 2, 4 year
All right,
plan?
I got you. I got the question. Well, my thing is this. This is what I am working on. Because of the corrupt banking system that's causing major problems, or the financial institutions that creating major problems for us, keeping us in debt. So the idea came where we need to have our own currency, cryptocurrency, blockchain banking, and our own credit union system. We can incorporate that, and what's the beautiful thing about that is we would have the economic power to trade with anybody in the world. We wouldn't have to worry about IRS taxing it. We don't have to worry about using US dollars for trade. Judgments, liens, and levies, frozen accounts, because we will have total control of our own economic independence. All right, this is, something that I'm working on. Because our people we don't have economic freedom. All right, and that's what we need. We need economic freedom because, like Drew Ali said, no nation respects the begging nation. Now, I don't know if you're aware of Iran and Venezuela were supposed to have given us something about $600 billion in reparations. I don't know if you're familiar with that. That's something that's going on as we speak. But again, that could be a major problem because the infrastructure that here, because we being subject to these people, They may not even allow us to even touch that money like they did Farrakhan. But we need economic freedom, because the only way we're going to be respected by these so-called white folks, if we have economic freedom, that we can build our own homes, you know, our own cars, our own, you know, we have the ability to do it, because we are doing it, but unfortunately we're just doing it under somebody else. But if we have our own independent economic infrastructure, they would majorly respect us.
And again, we make about $9 trillion, and we have all these guys that make all these millions of dollars entertaining all these black guys, and they rather have gold teeth and chains and cars, and I mean, so who do we blame? Who do we blame for this? Is the white man's fault? And we got all these guys. We got $20 billion a year on hair care and beauty products, $3 billion a year on alcohol. But I just could never blame that on anybody but us. I say we got to have a conversation about that.
Okay, you said that if we had our own cryptocurrency, we had our own economy, that the whites would respect us, right?
Yes.
Here's the question that I had, because there was a time we did have that. We had Black Wall Street. They got destroyed by the whites that, you know, were jealous of us having that. What's to stop them? What is the solution to stopping that from happening again once we do get on our feet in that way?
Well, listen to this. Good question. Listen to this. This addressed to Black Wall Street. I was in a play on Black Wall Street, because I had to study my script. But listen to this. What caused Black Wall Street to fall is because we didn't have a military to protect it. That was the problem, brother. If we would have had a military to protect it, it would have still been flourishing today. But now, I had to answer that question. Now, let's go back to the cryptocurrency. We don't need no military. All right. You don't hear Bitcoin saying they have to hire military to protect Bitcoin. When you got cryptocurrency, you don't have to hire nobody. It's almost like that company called MERS, Mortgage Electronic Registration Systems, Inc. And everything is like virtual reality. So you don't really need no military to protect our currency. We can trade with anybody in the world and don't have to worry about IRS. Because right now they're trying to figure out how to make people pay taxes on cryptocurrency. And it's difficult to do that because cryptocurrency is like saying you take a coin, a gold coin, and throwing it out into the middle of the ocean or the Pacific. How are they going to find that? As big as the earth is. You see what I'm saying? So the banking system is set up to rob us, to take from us. All right? I'm very heavy into finance. I talk about finance. Matter of fact, I'm so much into finance that some folks would say to me, brother, that's all you do is talk about finance. But Drew Ali said that it takes finance to lift the nation. Finance and science mean lifeline. If they can control your finances, they control your lifeline. We wouldn't even have to go to work if you have cryptocurrencies generating the equity for you where nobody can take from you. You follow me what I'm saying? When they say crypto, all right, that means that it's cryptic. Like proto-mail, it's cryptic. Nobody can just get into your system like that because it's kryptonite. You see what actually happened on the news lately, right? About Equifax. How the Chinese military turned around and hacked it. Got into it, and everybody's information exposed. All right? But if we have our own system, we wouldn't have to worry about that. You know, what I'm saying is that we have to secure ourselves, but we have to come up with technology. Technology and spirituality is going to help us. Because when it comes to spirituality, nobody can really put their hand on it. That protects you. And technology. Technology is the key. We have to have some technological sciences that's going to put us in a position where it would act like a weapon. When you got a weapon like that, like Cuba, you know, Cuba's right in our backyard. This country is attacking everybody else thousands of miles away, but Cuba is still intact. Venezuela, and all the other Latin American countries, you know, are being attacked. And you notice they're not touching Cuba. Something's going on with Cuba while they're not touching Cuba. Peace.
So, I have a question
Yes.
for you, sir.
Yes.
You mentioned, both of you all have cited Africans as being one of the main sources for the dissent and the
Yes.
disagreement and whatnot that you find in the black community today. You mentioned in particular tribalism. So, and tribalism and reparations, and how, you know, the conversation of reparations from African nations
Yes.
is rarely talked about. So I wanted to know which African nations, number one, which African nations would, or do you believe that your people should be seeking reparations from, one? And then number two, how do you know who's supposed to give money to whom?
The DNA is one factor, and another factor is knowing your bloodline. Like, for instance, my people's is Gullah Geechee, and I'm aware that the Gullah Geechee, there was an influx of them coming in from an island off of Sierra Leone, Bunce, they call it Bunce Island. And a heavy population of them came out of that area because our people was known to grow rice. And of course, that was our trade, because we, as a people, that's another reason why the European wanted us so bad, because we had trades going on in Africa. It ain't like we was in poverty, we didn't have nothing going on, we were just sitting there waiting for us to take us. They understood the value of us. So my peoples grew rice, all right? And so there's ways to trace it back to certain villages or tribes based upon the language, based upon the food, based upon the DNA. You know, there's variables. Ghana was very heavy, especially the Ashantis. They was very heavy into the selling our people to the Portuguese. Angola was another area that was very heavy in selling us to the Portuguese, especially Sierra Leone area, Nigeria, Liberia. All right, you heard about the Ouida in Benin. Those places was captured and sold off to the Portuguese. So, but my point is, overall, that even though we may not be able to make the connection on who should get what, the point is that the masses of our people have been taken and brought over here. And I think it's an insult to talk about dual citizenship, because citizenship is really not an African thing. That's the European, and we are following their system. Dr. Sabi had said something that was very funny when he went to Africa and they asked him about a passport, and he said, well, I didn't have a passport when they took me, so why would I need a passport coming back? So it's just issues that we have to really look at. And of course, we have so much problems over here in the United States. Them Africans ain't gonna be looking for us to come over there to make no noise, because we'd be back at war again, you know? So, but I was just bringing it up to say that I think it's important, because I never heard nobody brought up that those African states should also give us reparations, just besides the European states.
I have a question.
Yes.
In the last 10 minutes of our program here. Dr. Claude Anderson was brought up, and I do agree with you that he should be one that we all should study
Yes.
as it relates to the voting system
Yes.
in this society.
Mm-hmm.
He's a brilliant scholar.
Oh, brilliant.
He mentioned in his best-selling book,
Yes.
Black Labor, White Wealth,
Yes.
that during the Reconstruction period,
Yes.
the blacks in this country owned 1/2 of
Yes.
1% of all the land.
The wealth, yes.
And here we are in 2020. Oh, thank you for that correction, all the wealth. Here we are in the year 2020,
Mm-hmm.
and blacks in this society own 1/2 of 1% of all the wealth.
Yes, he did state that.
So my question to Jauhar in particular is, how is voting going to change that percentage for us?
So, so voting is one aspect of it, because you vote, you send people into office who are going to support your agenda. And if your agenda is economic independence, just like right now in the city that I live in, the developers who coming in, they found a candidate, which is the current mayor, and they put millions of dollars behind getting her in office, so that she's now giving them back the land, the quid pro, what you call it?
A quid pro quo.
Yeah, so the deal is they invest in her, and then she in turn, when she got in office, she's making good on her promise to give them the land. It's a guy this white guy who was a bartender 10 years ago. She gave him 3 acres of land on Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue. She wasn't the mayor at the time, but he won a bid for that land where Big K Liquor used to be for $1. $1. And the government subsequently have helped him fund a $50 million project. So that's generational wealth. She's an African American mayor. She could have did the exact same thing for African American. But we don't have this kind of agenda, and we don't purposely put. Now in this region, there was a time when Marion Barry was the real Marion Barry back in the 80s, and in this county, Wayne Carey was the county executive. They were very intentional about creating black wealth. If it wasn't for Marion Barry, it wouldn't be a Kathy Hughes or Bob Johnson. Like, they became billionaires because he helped them. They used the black community and turned their back on the black community. So when you have this kind of stuff going on continuously, then this is what you get. And writing a couple of checks, to the NAACP, who really don't support the real issues in our community, the Urban League, these kind of outfits that's really run by people who don't have our interests at heart, that's not really helping our people. And until we had these real conversations with us, because they rich primarily because we support them. So that's where I'm at.
All right, the question that was brought to me was, would it be right for us to vote in a system that is ruled by colonists? My answer to that, after 16 years of study, is never would I vote for a colonist system. You can never get what you need by dealing with a group of people who design everything to be always against you, and no matter who you get in place, who they infiltrate, they always got a backup plan to shut you down. And if they can't shut you down, they'll kill you. They'll put you in prison, they'll strip you, they'll kill your family members. Economics is the way, like Noble Drew Ali said. The way that they got in power to overturn us is by hundreds and hundreds of years of wealth building. They use economics against us, and now they use that same system to put us in slavery with birth certificates, social security cards, driver's license, and marriage license. And until we can stop looking at everything else but the obvious, nothing's ever going to change. I go to court on a regular basis, fighting traffic tickets and beating them, exercising my right to travel. And guess what? Every time I share it with other people, they look at me as I'm some sort of hero or something. I'm like, y'all should be doing it too. But guess what? They're too afraid to do it because they don't want to fight these people head on. And it makes me very frustrated that I'm always out here on the front line and I don't have anybody behind me to follow behind me and do the same thing so we can have, more power behind it. We're always individualistic, and, until we work with each other, like we've been saying, we're always saying it, until we actually do it instead of keep saying it, nothing's ever going to change.
Something that you said was important. You said the reason that people don't, take the information and do it for themselves is because they're afraid. And to me, that's not a problem of somebody else. Like when I started studying the civil rights movement, one of the questions I was asked is, why did I think black people went to the back of the bus in the 50s and 60s? And it was a group of us in a class, and people came up with all kinds of stuff. It was the law. They was going to go to jail. They might have got killed. The truth of the matter is, people was just scared. So when you decide you're not going to go to the back, okay, so you can make a decision whether even if it costs you your life, you can make a decision. But I don't know that you go to the back of the bus and then complain about how white people, like as a man, I just don't do that. Like life ain't precious enough for me to live that way. I'm not going to go to the back and then complain. So I'm saying that we have not yet demonstrated that we'll put our money together to build institutions. And we have some evidence of what happened in Black Wall Street, right? That's one example. But we got $9 trillion. Like we could be doing, and we've come a long way from that time. It's a lot more sophisticated. But when I watched and read about COINTELPRO and during the Panther movement, when they decided to destroy the Black Panther movement, it was black people that they gave dope to go into those communities. So again, until we address our behavior, I don't know what the possibilities are. I don't know what they are. I'd love to see us demonstrate some character and courage and do what we need to do for our families and our community. That's what I haven't seen.
You got 4 minutes, family.
So tonight, I'm grateful for what everyone has said so far, but I think there's been a horrendous lack of context for a lot of what has been said tonight. People aren't just behaving. When I say people, I mean black people in this case, black or African American. You can define it however you like, but we're meaning that to mean individuals who are descendants of chattel enslaved individuals here in North America. People don't just act against their own interests and their own wills out the blue. They have to be conditioned that way.
True.
Through brutalization.
True.
Over and over and over again at every junction. Nobody's going to willingly act against themselves. That's the first thing that I want to say. The second thing that I want to say is that I find it interesting how you were talking about, black people always blaming somebody else for their problems, but then you get up there and talk about how, Africans sold us first, that's how we got here. I find that a little interesting. I do have
Is it true?
some commentary. Is what true?
Did black people sell us? Did they? You said you find it interesting.
What I'm finding interesting is the sort of hypocrisy and how you've been saying this whole time that black people sit around and blame, other people that are not involved or whatever. We should stop blaming other people and pull ourselves.
I didn't say nobody was else involved. I didn't say who was involved. I said we sit around and blame other people, but we don't take responsibility for ourselves. Those are facts.
So
that's not just.
So then I could, or anyone else who's listening to you could say that, well, black people should take responsibility for themselves. What is it? Why are we going back and blaming other people in Africa, for example, or other people in Europe, as you have been saying this whole time? That's the hypocrisy that I'm pointing out.
How is it?
Statement.
So I just like to ask you, how is that hypocrisy in the statement? So, and when I'm talking about Africans, we're connected to Africa. So they are our family. So I think we make a jump when we put white people right here and say, well, they did all this stuff to us, but we never addressed how we got there in the first place. It's like opening up a book and start reading it in the middle of the book. Like we got to go back to the beginning. And in the beginning, I found that black people did not value other black people and put us in this situation. And I said, based on my experience dealing with politics and encouraging people to vote, I watched black people that are public elected officials voted in office by black people decide to turn their backs on black people.
So I'm wondering about your sources as you talk about Africans. So for example, there were upwards of 12 million Africans brought to the Americas to be enslaved, right? So if we're saying that Africans sold all those people, then you can imagine selling 12 million people should make a lot of money. Where's the wealth in Africa? I find it hard to believe that people are people who are African or people in other races are not as good as hoarding wealth as white people are. So where's the money? Because you talked about your personal travels there, and I didn't hear you say anything in your recounting of what you saw concerning their particular wealth. As a matter of fact, it was said on the panel, I believe, by this gentleman here that you would have to go over there, bring your resources, and quote unquote fix up the place. So where is the wealth from the sale of all these individuals if Africans are solely responsible for the slave trade?
Oh my God, if you go to Africa, it's so different families, different groups of people have more money than you could ever imagine. It's just like
Specifics.
so when we visited the king of the Oni of Efe in Nigeria, was a very, very wealthy man, and with thousands and thousands of people that's underneath of him and his family. They are very, very wealthy people, and there are other people who are very, very poor, like people who don't have shoes, people who don't. So when you say where's the wealth, all the wealth that's in this world right now, all of the wealth, because the dollars that's created around here, they're just dollars. They didn't have no real significant value. The real value, the majority of the value of wealth in this world is in Africa. That's why when I've gone there, I see white people laying on the beaches all over Africa, because that's where the oil, the gold, everything that's worth something is in Africa.
This is a classic example of misdirection of, number one, context, and number two, an understanding of who's involved in something.
Thank you, sister. And thank you.
No, I'd like to finish
But yeah, you
our
can.
conversation.
You can.
So, I know
Y'all two
you
can.
just.
But we couldn't really get into the things that we really wanted to get into today because it was structured. But the whole thing is, man, that this Albion, not white, and we're not black people. We have to re-educate ourselves on these terms, man, because when you're talking about a Chinese person, he don't call himself yellow. A Japanese person don't call himself yellow. Somebody from Egypt, they call themselves Egyptian. Someone from Germany, they call themselves German. Where's black or white on the map? We have to re-educate ourselves, man, to who we are as a people. And we gotta understand, man, that this European came over here. If anybody can look at the definition in the dictionary, the 1828 Webster's Dictionary, it said that an American is the aboriginal indigenous copper-colored race founded here by Europeans. So he's a colonist, man. This guy's a colonist. And just like the brother said, it was renowned. They're not gonna, man, I don't care what you do. You're never gonna get justice in this system because it's a colonist system, man. They're not gonna, you can vote, you can do whatever you want, man. They're not gonna have nothing good for you until we realize who we are. Till we realize who we are. Nobody talks about how they was all slaves first. Here, nobody want to talk about it. All you want to talk about is when we were slaves, man, they was all slaves first. Now, it's true that we lost the power because of how we are right now. That's how we lost it. We did that to ourselves. And they stood by and gathered up, learned all the stuff we untaught them, and that's how they overthrew us. Now, why can't we get together? Why can't we get together and everybody come together and do the same thing? But we are so divided, man. We're so divided. But we have to understand, man, even when you're talking about we the American people, America does this to us, and America does that to us. Well, do Belize do that to us? Do Jamaica do this to us? Does El Salvador do this to us? All those are America. And we got it all politically wrong when we keep thinking that the United States is the only place that's America. This is a corporation, man. It's a business. And you can't get away from what the brother said, because that's what we do. We brush them off like, okay, that's just rhetoric. It's not rhetoric. This place, man, is a corporation. When you talk about America does things to us, man, it's 35 other American states out there that we don't even know about. We was never taught about this stuff. So the political brothers and sisters out here, man, they don't talk about this at all because they are paid. They don't give a damn about you whatsoever. They don't care about you. Man, we got to come together and get our stuff together. That's what we got to do, because everything that we've been taught, everything has been lies, man. When you talk about Columbus, guess what? Take it a little step further. There was no damn such thing as a Columbus. He's a fiction. And guess what? I was just told too that Harriet Tubman was also a fiction. All we do, man, is go by what they taught us, and we regurgitate this stuff, man. Nobody does real research. And the research that you do is the research that this European gives you. That's the research that you have. You're never going to get nothing, man. I don't care if you vote in this system. First of all, I know you can get stuff done on a local level. Sure. You can. But this federal level, man, this stuff is a dog and pony show. It's a dog and pony show, man. This stuff is all arranged. They already know who they're putting in. Let's stop playing. It's never going to be an equal vote. They just do that because they know you guys is dumb as hell. That's why they go along with the vote. But they already know who they putting in. It's already chosen. Now, what he said about Trump, for real, he's doing way more than Obama and any other people. I ain't for him.
I am.
Because I don't vote. But he is. He's doing a lot more than any of these presidents, man, that's been in office, man. But we got to stop playing and understand, man, who we are. And until we understand who we are, man, you'll never, just like in the Bible, Hosea 4:6, it says, our people are destroyed. We are destroyed people, man, because of a lack of knowledge. We are destroyed, man. Look at our youth out there. Who going to grab them up? This brother right here, we don't have nobody to pass the torch to. Because they out there, man, doing whatever they want to. But it's kind of like our fault. We need to go after them. You know? Anybody got any other questions? Because this thing is really deep, man.
I think we should wrap it up just for time's sake.
But we can wrap it up and
finish the.
We can talk.
Yeah.
Y'all can talk like on the round table or whatever.
Yeah.
You know? So, peace and love to everybody.
Please clap it up.
Give it up for the brother. Give it up for Al Kamal.
It's great. I learned a lot. And I just want to really say real quick, I think one of the defining moments for me for the evening was when Brother Jauhar, you mentioned that we can do whatever we want. It don't matter the laws, as long as we rise up. If we rise up in revolution against this system, they bound to do whatever we want because the power lies with the people. And I truly believe that. You know, no voting booth, no officers of law, no judges, none of that could stop us if we decided to really revolt and rise up and be as one and take what we want. So I think that, for me, was the defining moment. But both of you brilliant brothers have shared a lot of wisdom with us today, so thank you so much. And family, thank you, online family. Be on the lookout for some future events, and that's what we do. Ali and I, we come together just to broach these challenging subjects that a lot of people are really energized and emotional around.
and they don't want to talk about it, and they have their certain way about it. But as you can see, if you really took the time to listen to this whole debate, you'll understand that there's some wisdom on both sides of the argument. So why not let's take with the best of both worlds and bring it together and make some fruit, and let's move forward, push forward. Thank you, family, and we will resume the conversation after hours. I'm going to turn these video recordings off.
Peace, everyone.